Welcome all fellow wannabes, nerds, geeks, dweebs, and pancake lovers. We are here to talk about Days of Future Past. You're going to hear some really varied opinions on the show tonight, but let's see who's going to be duking it out. Gabe, how's it going?
What's the meaning of this?
Oh, this is my show now.
No, I knew the old guy. Just so you listeners know, I had no say in this. He muscled in. He's like, Gabe, you're running this podcast into the ground. You suck. Everyone hates you. Just
You
go
took
ahead
a week off, and I
Yeah.
orchestrated a coup behind your back. So
Basically. And then
I'm the captain now.
Yeah, exactly. My penance was having to just watch you steer my ship. No, I'm doing well. Thank you for taking the reins tonight. It's nice. Yeah. It's a first for me, you know.
Well,
so,
we're going to talk all about crocheting, so I hope you're ready for that.
Hey, you know what? I'm all about sharp needles. So, you know, just bring it on. But no, I'm doing good. I'm doing good.
Life is good for you?
Yes, absolutely.
Nice.
I'm a little tired, mostly because I finally have discovered. I didn't discover it. I've experienced survival Minecraft now for the first time. So it was last time I checked, like last night, it was 11 o'clock, and I kissed my wife goodnight, and then the next time I looked at the clock, it was 4:30 in the morning.
Oh man.
So. Yeah, it was one of those. But other than that, I'm doing good. I got my Mountain Dew, I got my water, I got my homies. So yeah, life is good. Life is good.
Nice. You know, whenever I think about Minecraft, I think about like pictures that I see of people that will post who spent 5 years building all of New York City or something, and so I always look at that and think, you know, I don't have time for that. as cool as that looks, I would build a hut and be like, all right, what's next?
Yeah,
So,
exactly. It's like watching the Grand Canyon. It's like vacation. You see the Grand Canyon, cool, time to go. Like, so yeah.
And plus, there was a video a few years back that I laughed at. I'll admit, even while I felt bad for the guy, he spent forever building this huge mansion, and then he accidentally set it on fire, and the whole thing burned down before his face on a live stream.
Wow.
And we all laughed, but we also felt bad for him.
Yeah, I hope that doesn't happen to me because I would have lost a lot of time. But yeah, I'm enjoying Minecraft. I think I'm going to be spending a lot of time in it. So
nice. Caleb, what's up with you?
Well, salutations, everyone. It's good to see you guys. Sorry. No, things are good. I'm excited to talk about this movie. Yeah, it'll be good. Nothing too exciting is going on in my life. I'm about to collapse and die at any given moment in the lead up to the Super Bowl because I'm just a nervous wreck, but no one really cares about that. So yeah, but if I'm not with you guys next time, you'll know what happened to me. It's because I'm dead in a ditch somewhere.
Caleb has passed on. I'm
not a huge sports guy. Someone asked me who I was rooting for, and I said the commercials. But I always watch the Super Bowl though. So yeah, and living where I live, I'm surrounded by a lot of Kansas City fans. So yeah, that'll be interesting.
It's gonna be wild. Hopefully things go the right way because I don't know. It's gonna be a fun one. Either way, I just hope it's a good game, but I also really, really hope the Chiefs win. Sorry if we have Buccaneers fans like listening to us, that'd be kind of, I don't know, incredible for our podcast that we've reached that large of an audience. But if you are listening to this, I really hope that your team loses.
Well, the best thing the best thing about the Chiefs is that they feature my favorite quarterback, not Tom Brady.
Yeah, that's a good one. That's
you might know him by his full name, anyone but Tom Brady. I would be happy for I really root for anyone but Tom Brady to win the Super Bowl every year.
Yeah. Anyone who's only allowed outside just to do football only is a terrible human being, I've decided. So yeah, I hope they lose as well. And for the record, that we have listeners all over the place, Caleb. And now there's a hit. So someone's putting a hit out on you because of that comment you just made. So thanks.
Put me out of my misery.
You're putting us all at risk, actually. So thanks for that. But whatever.
Tom Brady is not going to come after us. He can't get hit. He'll fall apart.
It's true.
Mikey, what's up with you?
Nothing new. Well, I mean, yeah, kind of doing the Minecraft thing with Gabe, teaching him how to craft the mines and just life, mountain biking, you know.
Nice. Are you like an old school Minecraft player, like one of the OG guys?
Not really, no. I started playing like a couple of years ago, probably. Jace actually is the one who got me into it and showed me how to do stuff, but it's really complicated actually. I was surprised the first time I got in there because I thought you just go in, build a house, and then you win. But there's so much more into that game. It's kind of intense sometimes.
So what's the draw? Is it the satisfaction of building something, or yeah, what is it?
I don't know. It's kind of like it's like I want to say a mindless game, but at the same time, it can be everything but that. Uh, it, it's really a make it your own type of game because there's not really a story, you know. So you just kind of you can set yourself a goal and you achieve that goal in the game, which is pretty cool. It's different than any other game, really. I think that's why it's still so popular.
Yeah,
But
if I could kind of piggyback off of you, Mikey, I think too, for me, I've been a very, I've played creative Minecraft for years, which is no rules. You don't really die. You can fly. Like, it's not traditional Minecraft. And I think the thing of it was, even in creative, it takes forever to build the idea that you want, like kind of like you have a grandiose idea of something. But now in survival, I don't think I would have appreciated survival had I not played games like Stardew Valley, Animal Crossing, because it's like whenever you take all the steps to achieve kind of your vision
mhm.
and you know exactly how to execute that vision, that's all you want to do. Like you're like, oh, cool, I want to keep going and like keep building. Oh crap, I ran out of material. Time to go back to the mine. I got to go get more cobblestone or go get more whatever. Do your thing. And it's like,
Yeah.
oh crap, my pickaxe broke. And it's just a constant. It's a constant loop of accomplishment, and it's a constant loop of, oh crap, I need to go do this thing. But to do this thing, I might have to do 5 other things, and all of those other things leading up to that, even if you didn't get the main project done, every step of the way is accomplishment.
Yeah.
So,
True.
Nice.
I mean, that's kind of what I am getting out of it. Like, that's why, and it's just, man, the time, Mikey, like, what is it about that? There must be some sort of sorcery, like, imbued in the game because I don't understand how much time passed that fast. Like, I haven't.
It's dude, yeah. It'll get you. That's one of the only games that I can throw on like one of my favorite soundtracks or something and just zone out. But like it's almost bad at sometimes because it's so much time. So much time passes and you're like, oh wait, what life?
Yeah, exactly.
But
It's bad.
if you don't have anything going on, it's different. But I mean,
and with friends, I mean,
yeah.
Holy crap. Like Mikey was saying, last night we were playing and he was kind of showing me the ropes, like for survival. And like I was clueless, and they have these realms, right? So before you could only like get on the world at the same time as someone else, I think if you had a private server or something like that, I think is a way to do it, but there wasn't really a good way to do it until now, to where now there's basically a cloud world where anyone who's invited to that world can join and build their thing on that world anytime they want, and it saves in the cloud basically. But like Mikey was showing me stuff around and I'm like, what's this? But they put it on hard mode. So a beginner, I'm like, oh God, what's that? Like stuff just chasing me around. And I'm like, yeah, like just like running around, and it's solid fun for sure.
Nice. This episode is brought to you by Minecraft.
Yeah, sponsored in
Minecraft. Minecraft. Build until you die.
Yeah,
and then do it again.
And then keep going. Yeah, exactly.
All right. Does anyone have any news to share? Anything in the media? Anything you think's interesting?
Okay, I want to talk about something. Yes, go ahead. You go.
No,
you go, Mikey.
You called dibs.
No, I want you to go.
No. Please.
Okay. There's all this news buzzing around, okay, about Knights of the Old Republic 3.
Oh.
Have you guys heard about this at all?
I have not.
Just from
I haven't, but I'm already annoyed by it.
Caleb, okay, I want to hear why. But from Caleb first, because if it's the same reason that I have for being annoyed with it, I don't want to waste any time, and I'd rather hear from somebody else, honestly.
I'm annoyed by it because I'm sure that there's a lot of people that are really up in arms about it and have very passionate opinions about it for something that probably isn't going to happen.
Mikey.
why is it a bad thing if it happens? Because I've seen a lot of people say, no, don't do that, it'll ruin everything. I don't know anything about the Old Republic, so I was kind of curious, like, why people are so upset about it.
Gabe.
So here's the thing. It's not a bad thing. It is just so that we talk about, Star Wars fans being like toxic all the time. And it's like, oh no, this is fact. Like, you're wrong if you think this, or yada, yada, yada. More Knights of the Old Republic is good, in my opinion. I think that's a good thing. But here's the deal. Knights of the Old Republic is not canon. It's never been canon, ever. Disney, whenever they acquired Star Wars, said everything we do from here on out is canon, period. Games, shows, everything, books. So to hear all this news buzzing around, it really kind of shows me, I don't know, there's all this news buzzing around about a Knights of the Republic 3 game, and it doesn't help that, someone in the industry is like, oh yeah, you'll be surprised to hear who's developing it. It's like Jason Schreier said something, so it must be gospel. Here's the thing. We are in the midst of a brand new era of Star Wars right now called the High Republic. We have the Acolyte coming out, a whole string of books, a whole thing of comic books, all that stuff. To me, it makes no sense to push the Old Republic in addition to the High Republic at the exact same time, or even within a couple of years of each other. If they're trying to focus on this new time period, that is going to be a big deal. Like, just from reading about it and hearing about it, it's going to be a big deal. And I think, I don't know, like, it would be a very fine line to walk if they did say, oh yeah, Knights of the Old Republic is now canon, for a couple of reasons. One, the Old Republic game developed by BioWare is a huge deal. And essentially they would kind of have to tear that away from BioWare and tell their own Old Republic story. I don't think it's in Disney's, I don't think Disney would say like, oh yeah, everything that's been told before, like that's the canon. No, they're going to tell a new canon, because that's what they did with Legends, is what I'm assuming would probably happen. Sorry. That was a tantrum, but whatever.
Go ahead, Caleb.
Well, first off, as Ahsoka Tano so gracefully put it one time, there's always some truth in Legends. So who knows? They can go back and they can make whatever they want to make canon. They've been doing that basically since Disney took over. They can do whatever they want, but and who knows? I mean, I don't have anything against the Knights of the Old Republic game. It's just, I don't know, what's the point in. I'm sure that's the thing. It's like, I don't even really know anything about this, but I'm just sure there's a lot of really heated opinions about this thing that no one even knows for sure is going to happen or not. And that just seems like a really like big waste of time to even like talk about it. Because come on, let's just focus more on all of the awesome stuff that we do know is actually going to come out. And once we hear what all these awesome games that are coming, let's just be excited about that. But why spend the time and effort like trying to retcon, or not retcon, but like bring something back when you could just go back and like play those old games? I don't know. It just seems kind of pointless to me, but it's whatever.
Reinstate a little bit. Like,
yeah.
Few thoughts on that. From the fan perspective, I wonder if for some people who may be upset by the idea, it's kind of like the I've been burned before. So they hate to think about something they love being done not well. The other thing that, I don't know, could worry them is, let's say hypothetically, if it's true and they're going to give it to BioWare again, the BioWare of today is a shadow of the BioWare that created those first two games.
It's so bad.
So I could understand people being worried about the current BioWare team trying to develop it.
It has been confirmed that it will not be done by BioWare, if it's even a thing at all, which makes no sense to me.
Sure. And the one thing I normally agree about, like, why is anyone even bother talking about it if it's not confirmed as a real thing? Except more and more over the past decade, especially the game developers, film developers have made it a more and more common practice to quietly leak rumors themselves, specifically to gauge public reaction, to see if it's something that they should do. Now, I'm not saying that that's right, or that that's like how you should choose your creative direction, because it obviously isn't. You shouldn't, try to create by committee. And fans often do not really know what they want until you give it to them. However, there could be people out there who think, well, what if these rumors they're putting out there are them putting feelers out there to see reaction, and so they want their voice to be heard, in case somebody out there is listening. Like I said, to me, that would be a very counterproductive way to develop things, but it's the way they do it a lot of times. So that could be why some people feel like they need to speak out. Or they're just angry. I don't know.
Star Wars
I think
fans
I think that's the thing with Star Wars fans in general is like whenever there's a conversation, I just assume it's something like they're angry about something because that's like kind of the default setting for Star Wars fans at this point, unfortunately.
Yeah. Just don't bring it up, Caleb. I will get triggered for no reason. Like,
great.
No, I'm just kidding. No, that was the only thing newsworthy that I talked about. And it just, my thing is I don't, and you know, it kind of, this all kind of stemmed from Mikey's question of like, why is everyone hating on it or like think it's a bad thing? I don't think it's a bad thing. I just don't think it's true. And there's a lot of news outlets that are saying it's true. And it's like, that makes no sense. I mean, it just makes, it's so counterintuitive to what Disney has been doing, or counterproductive, I guess is the right word. And what's a way to make Star Wars fans even more mad? Do something that you didn't do originally, like with a huge property. That, I mean, I don't know. I just, you know, that's just my 2 cents on it. But that's the only like news thing that I thought of.
Mikey.
It's another news topic. I don't want to derail you guys though. If you're still talking, it's kind of related in a way though, because if they are changing how they're telling stories, this kind of affects it. I guess there's been rumblings that the new president of Lucasfilms as of next year is George Lucas for a short while.
Are you sure that's not a fan wish thing? Or
no, it's rumblings, and then they've actually officially offered the job to Jon Favreau to replace him after a short while.
That would excite me more.
Yeah, because they want George Lucas to come in, but they don't know if Jon Favreau is going to take the job yet. But they also, I guess they have one backup. Oh man, Clone Wars guy.
Dave Filoni.
Dave
Filoni, and they have another unannounced backup that they haven't told anybody who it is in case none of them take the job.
I'm guessing it's Kevin Feige.
It might be. I don't. That's what I would think. But
man, I would just give it to Filoni. Like,
right?
Everything he touches is like pretty solid.
Yeah, I don't know, but then if making him the president would take him away from his storytelling, though, he would be more of a businessman. Where I think Jon Favreau would be a good business guy, and then leave Dave Filoni for all the, you know.
That would be the team up that we don't deserve, but that we need.
Yeah,
God.
That's the thing is I don't have any problem with Lucas like being in that role as long as he has a good set of characters around him to kind of rein him in.
Yeah, as long as he's not writing, as long as he's not doing the writing, because he's great with. I always have this debate about, you know, like sequels versus prequels and things, and it's text versus texture. And I didn't come up with that. I there's a thing that I watched and read about it that I thought would put it really well. Lucas is great at text. He's great at the lore. He's great. Actually, the prequels, if you strip off everything like the veneer of it that was really terrible, actually the framework underneath was solid.
Totally.
The framework underneath was okay. He just is a horrible director, and he shouldn't write the scripts or anything like that. He should just be the framework guy.
Yeah, so just about George Lucas, I think he's just so good at being a world builder. Like that's his wheelhouse, is creating world, and that's what makes Star Wars so special. So, and I think if you leave him just to like big picture, take care of all that stuff, and then let, you know, the details of it all be taken care of by other people, I think that could definitely work. But yeah, it's exciting to see where Star Wars is going. I think they're taking steps in the right direction. I mean, they're making changes and they're not necessarily doing things the same way that they were when Disney first acquired Star Wars, but I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing. They're trying to learn from, I think, their mistakes, and why wouldn't you want a company to do that? So yeah, I'm definitely not going to fault them for it, anything like that.
For sure. Gabe.
Yeah, I was just going to piggyback off Caleb a little bit and say, like, it would be amazing if we had Lucas as like president, and then Favreau and Filoni literally filling in all the creative gaps and like kind of having more of like the Kevin Feige type roles, and making more of the creative decisions, or, you know, pushing things in a certain direction, or maybe even, because I feel like that's what they've done is they've taken things that George Lucas has come up with and made them better, like just better overall, like have enriched the building blocks that he's made, you know. So I don't know. I would that would be like the dream team, you know. It'd be amazing.
Well, if there's one thing the sequels have demonstrated, it's that things suffer when you don't have someone in the background who's who has creative control, who a consistent voice that's guiding things. So
Yeah.
if they have realized that, that would be great. And bring in someone who's like got a good sense of Star Wars and loves it, and yeah, wants to see it realized better. I mean, yeah, why not? Caleb.
Yeah, and that's made me think. I love that they're bringing in these guys that have had success in the MCU, to kind of take things over, whether it's Favreau or Kevin Feige or even like Taika Waititi. Like
Mm-hmm.
they're bringing in these guys that have all made the MCU so successful in various ways and starting to use them in Star Wars. And why wouldn't you do that? Because the sequels just, I don't think, went as planned, and they were keeping the MCU and Star Wars kind of separate. But now that they're combining all these creative minds together, I think it's only going to work out for the best for Star Wars in general, because they proved with the MCU that they can really build a connected and interwoven world that, takes place, over the course of like 100 years almost, and stuff. So I think they could definitely do it. And yeah, it's really exciting.
Very cool. A couple other news items, just real quick. One, you guys have any thoughts on Google Stadia essentially imploding after less than a year and a half? Gabe.
Yeah, I would say we've been talking about this for like a year now. It's no surprise. Anything, any auxiliary service that Google offers outside of Gmail, Google Drive, and like the essential things that we all need, it all sucks and it always ends up failing. So, yeah, I mean, no big surprise. You know what I think it could have succeeded is if they would have said, "Hey, if you are a Google user, you can get Stadia for free." Like, since it is such a new concept, a new thing, literally, if you want to sign up to try Stadia, we will literally send you one if you'll pay a, 25 bucks for shipping or whatever, and I mean, it just, I think it was doomed to fail from the start.
Yeah, I read an interesting thought, and I thought that makes a lot of sense. Because I mean, on paper, you could say, "Hey, what about a Netflix streaming service for games?" And on paper, like, okay, yeah, that sounds interesting. But was something I'd read said, it doesn't matter if you're a multi-billion-dollar corporation, you can't just throw piles of cash at something and call it a game studio and expect that to work. Because a game studio is a lot more than cash. There's a lot of culture there that you have to build.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. And also, too, just another quick point. I think they tried to innovate in a time where it's not ready for that. Like, literally, the big dogs would have done it if it was a good idea. Like, Xbox would have pushed it further if it was a good idea. PlayStation might have. To try and innovate whenever you've never done anything with gaming was just a horrible idea. I think they would have done better by trying and compete with those other boxes and say, "Hey, you like Game Pass? Guess what? Like, we have licenses to games. We have licenses we paid for games too. And not only can you stream these games, but if you want to download them to this box, you sure can." You know what I mean? I think that could have been a super interesting model. It's like, hey, if you want to try the box, it's a $30 subscription per month or whatever, but you have that if you want to try it, and you don't have to have, you can play it on any screen you want type thing. I don't know. I think there could have been a lot of different things they could have done to be more competitive.
Mikey.
Yeah, and a big part of it for me is like I wish they would have succeeded. They have like 150 or 200 people that had jobs promised to them to build a AAA game, and now they're just like, "See ya." I mean, that's pretty icky business like handling, in my opinion. But I think they should have went the indie route and did smaller games and you can get these games here and only here. And I think that would have helped them out a lot, instead of saying, we're going to do 3 huge games and spend all of our money and time on that. That's, I don't know. That's pretty ballsy, and it did not work out for them.
I will say, and I'll get to you, Gabe, just one point in their favor from what I've read. From what I've read, they are trying to find internal jobs in Google for all those developers anyway.
I did hear that.
Which, of course, it's still not ideal because they're not doing the job they were hired for.
Yeah.
However, it could have been way worse if they had just said, "Hey, sorry, don't let the door hit you." So at least they're trying to be a little bit of a good guy about it. And second, I totally agree. If they had, when Google first bought YouTube, one of the first moves they made is they invested money in a whole bunch of channels.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, here's some money. Develop this and make it something cool. Why couldn't they have done that with a couple of dozen really interesting indie studios?
Yeah.
And it would have cost them less money in the long run, and they would have been like encouraging a lot of good talent out there who was looking for a place. I think that's a great idea that you had, Gabe.
Yeah, and I was thinking too, like I said before, they put too much emphasis and focus on trying to innovate. And it's like, oh, we have this awesome streaming box, and like we have these 12 amazing games coming out, and blah 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 blah. Literally, the same time Stadia came out, Apple Arcade is full of awesome games that like indie games, stuff you can only really play on Apple Arcade, stuff for mobile, stuff that can be used for controllers. So like just to kind of go on with your guys' point, you could have found success there. You could have at least it's like playing poker with someone who actually doesn't know how to play poker, and like they get a pair of twos and they're like all in. Like, you know what I mean? Like all in, and like
wait, that's bad.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
I've just and it's just I think it could have been something cool. It was never an option for me, but like I said, I think there could have been a lot of different things they could have done with it, except literally anything other than what they did probably would have made it last longer. But yeah.
Caleb.
I think it shows too just kind of how silly it is to think that, your company can come in and just try to carve out a piece of the pie. When you have, these three major companies, Nintendo, Sony, and Microsoft, who have been doing it for so long, for decades, where they've built that culture, like Ryan said, and they have all of these, this customer base already, and they're a proven source of, being able to provide high quality gaming experiences. But then you have one of the biggest companies in the world coming in. It's like, well, we want to try to do this too. And they failed. If anybody should have been able to make it work, it should have been Google. And then the only other company I can think of that could probably rival it is Apple. And I mean, Apple's doing their part with what Gabe was just talking about. But even then, it's not really rivaling Nintendo or Sony or Microsoft, because that's a completely different experience. So I think just to think that any other company is going to come in and be able to carve out a piece of that pie from those three major companies is just silly. And I don't think we're probably ever going to see that happen, because it's just too entrenched at this point.
Kind of reminds me of when DC came back into the comic book movie game 10 years after Marvel, and then tried to catch up with Marvel within like 2 years. And it was like, dude, you got to put in the time. It doesn't work otherwise. All right. Any other? Go ahead, Gabe.
I was just saying that's a great comparison, actually. Like, yeah, instead of just tiptoeing around, you went full force, like Airsoft Fatty. So there you go.
You never go full force.
All right. Any other news items before we go into the main event?
I got nothing.
All right. Tonight, we are talking about X-Men Days of Future Past, the movie, not the comic book series or the 90s cartoon series. Just to clarify.
Thanks for clearing that up for us, Ryan.
Right.
Wait, I thought we were doing the cartoon.
Yeah, same. Frick. God.
Cartoon did it better. Who said that? Anyway. Since I'm hosting, it does not fall to me tonight to do a recap. Who's brave enough to do a 30-second recap of the movie? Gabe.
Okay, I got this.
Here we go.
Thank you, Stanley. No, I'm just kidding. Shout out to anyone who gets that. So we find our heroes, the X-Men. It's kind of interesting though, because I feel like the beginning of this movie literally retcons every other movie up to this point. So we are in my mind, we are like in a offshoot. Like this is a different reality, or a continuation of what happened in First Class, like a alternate reality where mutants are being hunted down by the Trask, what do you call them? The Sentinels, right? Like the Sentinels in theory were a good idea for the humans, but they're being tracked down. They're kind of on the run, and they have found a way to transport themselves back in time to try and like figure out a way to basically they figure out a way to go back in time. And Kitty Pryde ends up sending them back in time a few days prior to whenever they're about to die. That way they get another chance. So basically all of the X-Men, you know, Magneto, Dr. Xavier, or Professor Xavier, Wolverine, Storm, pretty much everyone who's left over meets up, you know, with the other mutants, and they get this grand idea. Hey, we can send Logan's subconscious back in time because he can rapidly heal and he can prevent all these things from ever happening. You know, Mystique killed Trask, which in turn made the Sentinel program go, you know, forward at a progressive rate, yada yada yada. And that is what they're trying to do. Basically, it's X-Men Back to the Future is what it is, and that's basically what's happening.
Caleb.
It's basically the same plot as any of the Terminator movies. That's it.
Nice.
Or any time travel movie ever.
Yeah.
But good.
Unless you're Ryan. Ryan hates it.
No,
I
don't.
I didn't think Ryan was. I didn't think Ryan was going to do any
Let me be
podcasts
clear.
over things he doesn't like.
Let me be clear. I don't hate this movie. I just don't think it works very well.
Oh.
There are movies that I loathe, and I'm personally offended that they exist. This I don't feel that way. I just kind of came out of being like, well, that just didn't work at all. So yeah, but you know, I definitely feel stronger about other movies than I did about this one. But let's start out talking about what you guys liked about it. Mikey, you said this was one of, if not your favorite X-Men movie. Why don't you start us off?
Oh, okay. Are we doing good, bad, the ugly?
Good. What worked for you?
The good. Okay. Well, I mean, it's got a bunch of Wolverine in it. I love Wolverine. Hugh Jackman, best casting for that character of all time. I mean, and you know, are we talking about the plot at all, or just?
It's all fair game. I mean,
All
it's an
fair
old
game?
movie. You can.
Okay, so the end.
Don't worry about spoilers. Say what you want.
No, I really like how they did like the I guess the future the X future Wolverine is kind of drastically different from when he goes back in time, because it seems like he kind of changes through that storyline. And I love the development of, oh, he's the only one that will ever know that happened. I love that. That's one of my favorite parts of the movie. And going forward, I just like the implications of what this movie says too, especially since most of X-Men has been acquired by Marvel, like how they're going to incorporate that, and if they're going to keep the same characters and people playing them. I think they could really play with that if they wanted to. But I don't know. It's not so much about the movie itself for me. It's just about what could happen tying into this movie that interests me more. But I still really enjoyed the film though. But there's not a lot of good points, like specifically. I really just enjoyed it all around personally. But I'm interested to hear what you have to say, Ryan.
I'll go last.
Okay.
And I'll point out a couple of things that I enjoyed, because this is the good round, and then when we get to critiques, I'll bring up some issues that I had. Caleb or Gabe, who wants to go next for what you liked?
You go, Caleb.
Okay. Yeah, so there's a lot. I think Wolverine is a big part of this movie, and I like that part a lot. It's like that thing that First Class is missing. Wolverine brings that in this movie. I still love Magneto. He's probably my second favorite character in this movie. I just love his character so much. Both the old Magneto and how he's kind of come around, and I love the conversation he has with Charles, and he's like, we wasted so much time fighting each other. I love that. And then seeing them again, kind of at odds, but also kind of having to work together in this movie. I just love their dynamic, and I think it's really, really good. This movie has some really incredible visuals. For example, the scene with Quicksilver is just, it's chef's kiss good. It's really, really good. I watched this with my wife, and she's like, that scene is just so awesome. And it's so true. Like, that scene is incredible, where he's running through and you have the water droplets from the sprinklers, you have the bullets, and he's just running through, listening to music. It's a really, really, really good superhero movie scene. And yeah, it's crazy coming into this movie, all the X-Men movies have kind of left the whole timeline in a total like weird place. There's just all these inconsistencies and terrible things, and you can really see that Bryan Singer was given all of that and was like, all right, fix it. And he came up with this. And I think you couldn't have done a much better job of trying to fix everything and kind of like, hey, I'm going to take, all of the mistakes that you made with X3 and the Wolverine. We're going to try to gloss over those as much as possible. Professor X never got dusted or anything like that. Like, we're just going to move past that and we're going to try to, build off of the good points of those movies. And I think they wrapped it up in a bow as good as they could have. And I kind of almost wish that they had just stopped with this movie and been like, all right, that's it. Those are the X-Men movies and we're good. Because I think it really puts a bow on it in a way that I think really exceeds the expectations that you would have had before this movie with all those prior X-Men movies, because it was a mess.
Gabe.
Yeah, so this is my favorite X-Men movie. Easily, like hands down. I think it is a proper sequel. I think it's truly a proper sequel to First Class. I think it does it continues the character development. It develops the characters, first of all, from First Class into something more interesting, like the progression from Charles from First Class to that movie and just kind of how he's having to cope with it. James McAvoy kills it, in my opinion. Yes, a lot of Wolverine. There's a lot of little things that I like. I like how Bryan Singer did do a pretty good job of retconning a lot of the stuff we hated in some of the other X-Men movies, while kind of continuing the story in such a way it's like, okay, we're going to take this a new place, and kind of giving the older characters and the older cast a proper send-off, and inadvertently creating offshoots for Wolverine going forward. Like Wolverine got another movie a few years later, which put an end to his story, which I don't think he really realized maybe he did realize what he's doing. I don't know. But I don't know. I think this movie sets up a lot of things, and I also think it ties up a lot of things that were kind of frustrating. And I think there is like Caleb said, a bow put on for the nostalgia that we have for the older movies. We grew up watching those movies, and I love the way that they do that. He mentioned the Quicksilver scene, easily my favorite scene. Like, I LOL'd multiple times during that scene. It's just so funny. And yeah, I mean, I think this movie was really, really entertaining in a lot of ways. But I don't think it's perfect, but I do think it is probably my favorite X-Men movie for sure.
Cool. Wow. So were you the one before that said it was your favorite? I thought it was Mikey. Sorry, Mikey.
No, I think I said that a while ago, but it might have been Gabe too. I really like it. But
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, the Quicksilver scene is pretty awesome.
yeah.
Yeah, visually it's great. There's a lot of good humor. Mikey.
What happened to his accent? Wasn't he Russian?
Yeah, it's a different universe.
Wait, yeah, sorry. My bad.
Yeah, that part was very cool. And yeah, visually they do some fun stuff and in other points as well. As much as I didn't like the future Sentinels, I thought they were rendered very well. They looked really cool. Even though I didn't like them in general, they looked awesome. Mikey.
What didn't you like about him?
I'll get into that.
Oh, okay. I got you.
There's problems. There's issues. Like, yeah.
Well, and I will say for me, that part is not even a
big point.
Well, it's a criticism, but only that part. There are other things that I have story criticisms. My issue with the Sentinels is purely personal preference. That's it. So
okay.
I don't blame them for that, but I'll talk about it a little bit.
Okay.
All right. So let's start talking about what we think. Even if you loved it, what would you pinpoint to say, you know what, I would have done this differently, or I think this could have been better? Gabe, you want to start this time?
Yeah, I really do. Mystique, it totally misses the ball. It totally did not land back in 2014, and it totally does not land for me in this movie at all.
Wow.
I feel like Jennifer Lawrence was kind of in between scenes from American Hustle or whatever blockbuster, whatever other blockbuster she was working on. It just kind of felt like fill-ins. Like, her scenes have zero emotional impact for me at all, and does not sell it one bit. So I really don't like that they focused the narrative around Mystique making a decision, or the decisions that she made. And you know, I guess it kind of makes sense, but it just doesn't land for me. That's probably the biggest problem I have with this movie, honestly. And just, I don't mean to be mean. I don't think her acting's very good in it. So it just didn't feel, I don't know. There was kind of a sense of like hunger, I guess, in the first movie that Jennifer Lawrence kind of brought to the table. Like she was kind of young and aspiring and things like that. But, after Hunger Games and all this other stuff, I don't know. I just felt like that feeling was kind of gone for me personally. So that's like my biggest one. Also, I think this movie's too long, like 30 minutes too long. It just feels, I don't know. It just feels really long to me in some way, like in some areas, like, and I understand they got to tell the story that they wanted to tell, and maybe 30 minutes is too much, but I don't know. It feels like they could have shaved a little bit of time off of the movie. But that might be, that's another thing. It's just a personal preference. And then also I kind of have to agree with you. I don't really like the way the Sentinels behave. It seems kind of counter to what we find in the source material, but I understand, wanting to take liberties with source material. So yeah, that's just another personal preference, but I think that's kind of the biggest ones for me that I have.
Caleb.
I love that about them. I mean, here's the thing. I mean, maybe because I didn't read the comics and I didn't watch the animated series as a kid, I just don't really know what the Sentinels are supposed to be other than these big robots that kill X-Men or kill mutants or whatever. But I love that they're just completely unbeatable and that they're completely it just causes this sense of dread, and this sets the tone for the movie that it's really in dire straits. Like, because otherwise, what's the point of the whole movie if they're beatable? Like, what? Just have a movie where it's set in a post-apocalyptic world where they're just fighting Sentinels and Wolverine is just clawing them. But I think that would make for a worse movie if the Sentinels weren't completely like just indestructible. I mean, you get that climactic battle at the end where they're just kind of fighting and they're just trying to like hold them off. I love that. There's this sense of just like they're going to get there, and it's such a desperate like underdog story that I think just makes it so much better than it would be if it was like on a level playing field, because it makes the end where they actually succeed much more weightier.
Mikey, what do you think?
Man, I'm just thinking about all the things they said. I'm having a hard time to think. I actually like, especially with Gabe's point, I actually really enjoyed Jen. I think she brought it more this movie than she did in any of the other ones, personally. But I also, it's the Back to the Future effect with the Sentinels. I mean, it's always got to be a weird solution to save the timeline or change the timeline. In this point, I mean, I don't know. I feel like I give it a lot of passes, which I probably shouldn't, but I don't know. I'm having a hard time agreeing with that, because I kind of like Caleb. I kind of enjoyed it.
I saw Gabe's hand go up first.
I forgot a huge one too. Well, it's just from what Mikey just said. The Back to the Future effect. I hate that. I hate Marty McFly is playing guitar and his hand starts to disappear. That's not how that works. You're existing already. Like that's not how that works. So like whenever, and I'll never forget, as moviegoers, we don't really think about it that much, or maybe, we didn't used to think about it that much. Like if you are existing, you're already born. You're already born in a side, another timeline. You are in another timeline existing at this, you know what I mean? So there's an exception here with this movie, is in that it's Wolverine's same body. Like there's not another Wolverine running around. It's the same person that they're using. But whenever he saves the day, whenever the Sentinels are attacking, it's like everything goes back to normal in that timeline as if it never happened. But I don't know. It's just, it's a really weird, it does do the Back to the Future thing. It's so weird. And maybe it's because I just feel like I wanted a different resolution. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
but I understand it's a showbiz, right?
Caleb.
I think that debating the how time travel works in movies is kind of silly.
Yeah.
I think it's really silly, actually, because come on, it's time travel, and literally the way that they did it is literally like how every other time travel movie other than Avengers Endgame did it. Yep. Like it's kind of silly, and that's one of the things that makes Avengers Endgame game great is they took a formula and they improved upon it and created this whole other thing. But like, come on, like I think that's super nitpicky, and I think it's kind of silly to debate that. Also, I don't agree with Gabe's take about Jennifer Lawrence either. I think in a sense this is supposed to be her movie. Maybe her role isn't executed, but I don't think that she detracts from this movie at all, because this is a movie about Mystique. She's supposed to be one of the central characters in this movie. And I don't know. I didn't get that thing, because she's supposed to have this kind of icy coldness to her that you had in the first 3 movies. And you're seeing her kind of develop, or it transitioning between being, you know, the actual relatable character in First Class to that icy villain that's in X1 through 3. And you're getting this person here in the middle. So I don't know. I don't really agree with that one either. Sorry, Gabe.
Mikey.
Yeah, that.
No, defend your honor.
No, bad game.
No, I was just thinking, like, I agree with that, but I see where you're coming from, Gabe. But one nitpick actually popped in my head. It's something I really liked, but every time I think about it, I'm like, God, that's so dumb. Logan just gaining memory later on, like Gabe was saying, in a different timeline, absolutely no sense. That doesn't, that's not how that works. But I mean, that's probably my biggest gripe is the ending. Even though it's nice and it wraps it up in a bow and it makes you feel good, it is completely insane. But that, I don't know. I have a really hard time with that. But I like it at the same time.
Yeah, I agree with Mikey too. It's like Caleb says something like, we don't arguing about time travel, how time travel arguing about how time travel works in movies. It's silly. Yeah, it is silly. And so is having a podcast where we talk about God knows what, you know what I mean? It's one of those things where it's yeah, exactly. I want to be sold on this thing. I wish I could go back to being like, oh yeah, that makes sense. But I just think about, like, I know this doesn't make sense, but they're trying to make it make sense, but it doesn't make sense. So I'm frustrated that I'm not smart enough to make it make sense. And I'm frustrated that I can't be entertained by this thing. And for the record, I didn't hate Jennifer Lawrence. I didn't hate her in this movie. And you're right, it is supposed to be her movie. It just did nothing. It didn't do anything for me. Like I feel nothing. So, you know, there's that. And if they had an idea of where they wanted to go, to Mikey's point, like if they had an idea where they wanted to go with Wolverine's story, shouldn't they, you know, because we see him again later, you know, in these movies, shouldn't he remember that too? Since, I mean, you know, I guess since it's going back to the other timeline of what would have happened had the Sentinels never happened, I guess that makes sense, kind of. It's just, it is kind of hard to wrap your mind around and keep 4 different timelines, or, you know, 4 different things going at the same time, and then have it all make sense. Be like, oh, you know, that moment of clarity.
Caleb.
All right, so let's get silly about time travel for a second and talk about it. We have to realize too that the mechanics of time travel in this movie work differently than in other time travel movies, because it's not actual, like, we're sending Wolverine back in time. Ellen Page's character is sending his consciousness back in time to where it's taking over
this isn't more confusing.
Superseding the consciousness of the Wolverine back in the 1970s, right? So it's taking over that person. And then he's living on until Ellen Page is done doing her thing and sending that consciousness back in time. And then once that's over and she's stopped doing that, then that consciousness moves back forward to this current time. So it works differently than in Back in the Future and Terminator and Avengers Endgame or any other like time travel movie, because it's a different thing. It's a mutant with an ability. So it all works for me because it's not that she's actually sending the physical Wolverine back in time, like in Back to the Future, where they get in a DeLorean and go back to 1955. It's different. They're sending the consciousness of a person back through that mutant's powers, and not the physical actual person. So and this is why it's silly to talk about, because it's just so complicated and weird and wild. It's just such a weird thing to pick apart because yeah, it's completely ridiculous. I don't know. It's just
Mikey.
I don't know.
I don't know. I mean, at least Doc Brown was a scientist and he didn't have superpowers.
But that's the thing. It's like it's comparing apples and oranges. It's like
true.
It is.
it's
It really
comparing
is.
apples and oranges. Like,
I know
this
you
is
can.
silly.
I know you want to tear your hair out, but it's fun talking to you about it.
I have one more thing to say about this. Just one more.
Gabe, and then I'm gonna chime in with a couple thoughts.
Okay, yeah, and I'm sorry. And I'm not saying that the time travel aspect isn't entertaining. It is entertaining. It's very entertaining for me personally. I just you have no, well, that's not true either. Whenever it literally shows the scenes transferring from it's one way, then it's another way. It's, oh, we're in peril, we're not in peril. Like, I feel like had the Sentinels never happened, like what happens to that branch of time? Like it doesn't not exist. It's existing right then. All those people still exist. Their consciences are still in that timeline. So like what is happening to them? Like
They're
just
definitely all dead.
Yeah, they all died. Everybody died.
Maybe that
no.
was the thing. Maybe it wasn't that they was different. Maybe it was showing a different timeline and that same, not that they disappeared, but that
Yeah,
it was,
that's
this
probably-
is
yeah.
the other timeline.
Well, and if that's what they were trying to convey, that makes more sense actually, if that's what they were trying to convey. So there you go, Mikey. Oh my God, you actually helped me for once.
Hat
Don't
tip.
you ever try and use that against me ever. All right, I'm done.
Okay. Go ahead, Caleb.
Can I share something that I didn't like from the movie? Because I don't want to just be the guy that's just defending it. Yeah. But one of the things I wish that they had done, or I would have done differently, is I would have involved more characters from First Class in this movie. Because they spent First Class, basically, it's like we're getting the gang together. We have all these awesome mutants together. And then all of those mutants, except for Beast, Mystique, Magneto, and Professor X, they're basically all gone. We get the one guy in Vietnam, but we're kind of led to believe that everyone else died. They're just dead because Trask experimented on them or whatever. And I just wish that they could have worked another way around that, because, they spent a lot of time with us getting to, they wanted us to get to know those characters in First Class, right? And show us all of their cool abilities, but then we just never see them again. And they're just like, they're dead now. And I wish that we could have gotten to see a little bit more of them in this movie, because I think that would have been really cool.
Mikey.
I do too, but I mean, at the same time, would you rather see those side characters or Hugh Jackman in the movie?
Yeah, no, and I think that's totally reasonable take.
Yeah.
Totally reasonable.
Okay, I'm gonna jump in with a few comments here. I'll start with talking about the Sentinels. It's the one thing that I'll start with. The thing that I said is really just personal preference. So it's not even really a criticism. It's just something I wish they had done. I feel like the Sentinels are so iconic in X-Men lore. I feel like if you're going to have Sentinels, give us the Sentinels from the comic.
Yeah.
So what you saw in the comic a lot was, yeah, the machines were, big and super powerful and everything, but they weren't all powerful. They were still machines. And so for lower level mutants or mutants that were on their own, they were incredibly dangerous. But when you had mutants that were tough, mutants that worked together, of course, like the X-Men, then the Sentinels were not as big a threat. So you ended up having some really cool scenes in the comics with X-Men and other mutant teams fighting hordes of Sentinels, and it was super cool. I mean, you could have had awesome scenes of, imagine scenes of Wolverine, slicing through the knees of a bunch of building tall machines, or have Cyclops like shoot out a huge eye beam and cut off a bunch of their heads. I mean, you could have done some incredible battle royale scenes if you had just given us the Sentinels from the comics. So
would have been just like Avengers.
That's I was gonna say the exact same thing.
Would have happened before Avengers, though. So
Yep.
So
I mean, not necessarily. The first Avengers movie came out in 2012.
Oh, that's right.
They had the exact same thing.
Well, the difference is you have 100-foot tall machines that are built specifically to capture mutants, or however tall they are. In the comics, they were actually bigger than they are in the movies by quite a bit, if I recall correctly. So I think that, and I'm not saying that that's the only action that should have been in there, but if you're going to put in something from the comics, why? This is one of the things that in the early couple of movies they had to kind of hold Bryan Singer back from doing, because he wanted to change everything, because he liked the core idea, but he had no loyalty to the comics or the characters or anything. He wanted to make it where Cyclops didn't even have like a visor. He wanted to give him these weird goggles, and there had to be someone on set to tell him, no, you cannot change this. But I don't think he had that for this movie, which is how we got Sentinels that don't really belong anywhere. And even though the future Sentinels looks cool, the issue from a story standpoint, from making those future Sentinels essentially unbeatable, is that it makes the conclusion obvious, because the conclusion can only be one thing. If the X-Men are not going to lose, the story isn't going to end with every mutant dying. So obviously, if it comes down to, if we don't change this, they're all going to die, there can only be one ending, which means that there's nothing interesting. There can be no surprises. Of course, for a movie like this, the good guys are, probably going to win. But the way they did it makes it so that they can only win in one way. And that makes it less interesting, because you already know everything that's going to happen. Yeah. So I didn't like that. A few other thoughts. And to me, a lot of it just goes down to something that I find distasteful, which is writing that is lazy because it's easy. And how, okay, we'll write this thing because it solves an issue, but it really doesn't make any sense, especially in the grander scheme of things. For example, with Quicksilver, the ironic thing is that the best scene in the movie, showing off Quicksilver, also essentially breaks the rest of the plot, which is why they had to keep him out of all the other scenes, because the movie would have been over in 2 minutes if you had just brought him along.
Yeah.
To me, it's very lazy writing to have a character like that. And instead of, factoring him in and say, okay, well, how do we work it out even when we have a character like this? You just don't bring him. Don't bring him because it would be too easy. Well, then you're not a very good writer. If you can't find a way to still make this compelling with a character like that without conveniently just not bringing him, that's lazy writing, and you shouldn't be writing a multi-million-dollar movie. Also, Kitty Pryde does not have that power. She has never had that power.
Oh my God. That never happened.
She has never had that power. They didn't even try to explain, suddenly the girl who can phase through things can now send your mind back in time.
Which I guess she did. She did phase through walls a couple of times, but
I wondered, because I was like, I didn't know, they didn't say anything about that in the original 3 movies.
Yeah, because she's never had that power.
That makes sense.
Again,
don't give it to Professor X, whatever you do, who does nothing the whole movie, by the way. Like, good God.
Yeah. So another lazy writing thing is that at the end, okay, things get fixed because Mystique decides not to shoot that guy, right? But everybody forgets, conveniently, how Magneto dropped a stadium around the White House. They're still cool with mutants after Mystique doesn't shoot that guy, even though Magneto literally performed a terrorist act around the White House, and they're suddenly like, oh yeah, we don't need Sentinels because she didn't shoot a guy.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is a continuity thing. Trask goes from being a tall black guy to a white little person inside of the space of a couple of movies. That makes zero sense. Just use the guy you had before. I don't care if Peter Dinklage is the flavor of the month when you cast the movie. You just don't do that.
Yeah, in the throes of Game of Thrones, like we'll get Dinklage. That'll be great.
Yeah. Another one.
Understand that one.
Suppressing Charles' powers through half the movie is one of those things that it's a limiting plot contrivance that you only use when you can't think of anything interesting to do with the character. It's just like keeping Quicksilver out of it. It's lazy and it has no place in an actual good script.
Even if the performance is good by James.
Even if the performance is good,
which it is, by the way, arguably the best. Just saying.
Now here are my thoughts on time travel.
Here we go.
Now with time travel, you can comment on whether a system is defined and whether it works as designed. So, because that's, at least it should do that. At least it should tell you, here's the broad strokes of how time travel works here, and we're going to stay within those lines. And if we're going to bend the rules, there's going to be a reason. It didn't do that at all. Super fast and loose from scene to scene, whatever works with time manipulation, however you want it to go. That's just the way it happened. That too is lazy writing, which I do not like. Also, if you're going to send Logan back in time, why not send him back to the first class point when they find him in that diner and have him turn around and say, hey, before everything goes to crap, here's everything you need to know.
Literally.
Eric, you're going to end up in prison. Charles, you're going to want to take this drug. Don't do that. Everyone watch out for Mystique. She's going to try to kill this dude. Send him back there and then the entire Days of Future Past movie doesn't happen. But it would make more sense to do that, but they don't make the choices of the things that actually make story sense. Okay.
Then the whole movie of Days of Future Past wouldn't happen.
So come up with either explain why you're sending them where you are, or send them to a time that makes more sense. You can't send them to the time that's going to be the least convenient just because it's going to make the fill up your movie with things that happen. Good storytelling doesn't work that way.
That's so true.
Okay. Wolverine's consciousness murdered the Wolverine that had been living in the X Mansion for all of those years afterwards. It's not just that the guy who's been with the X-Men all those years gained new memories. No. He overwrote that Logan, the one that all the other X-Men except Charles have known. That guy is dead. And now everyone's friend that they've had for decades is dead, and they don't even realize it. And the film never addresses it.
Mm-hmm. That's what I was wondering, because I was like, so everything's different, but does he remember that? Does he remember what happened? But no, it doesn't seem like it.
His consciousness jumped from the future to 73, and from 73 to the point at the end of the movie, where everyone is magically back to life for some reason.
That's crazy.
So literally their friend they've had for years is dead, and all Xavier says is welcome back. It drives me, and like I said, and I know I rapid fire shot a whole lot out at you. That said, I don't hate the movie. There are movies that I hate. I just think it was incredibly lazy. And as someone who puts a lot of work into crafting what I feel like are really tight, well-constructed stories, I find that kind of offensive. Mikey, I saw your hand first.
Do you like this one more than the ones that we've reviewed so far? Or
I don't think I've been here for all of them. I was here for First Class.
No, yeah. I mean, from the movies that became for this, do you like this one more than those, or is First Class your favorite so far?
First Class is still ultimately my favorite X-Men movie.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Gotcha. Cool.
This is definitely not the worst X-Men movie, but
no, definitely
X3 was horrible. X-Men, like Wolverine, was horrible. I hate those movies. This I don't hate. It's just that I feel like it could have been great.
A lot better. Yeah.
Gabe.
Yeah. And I think too, X-Men has a lot of heart in the source material, like the comic books. There is a lot of really, really deep storytelling and character development and really awesome stories being told. And to argue, I'd say probably the most comic true is probably First Class, which, I enjoy, but it's not my favorite. Up to this point, we've always had just these blockbustery, kind of surface level stories, sans a few character development like Charles, like Logan, like Magneto. But the overall story is kind of different feeling than what the comics give you. And I feel like finally, since they've been trying to execute like this really good blockbuster movie, finally it kind of felt like it got to that point where it was like, this is what you've been trying to do for the past decade or 12 years, and this feels like the best version of that. And I think whenever you get the best version of that, blockbuster wise, where it's kind of like it is like the Back to the Future, where it doesn't need to make sense as much it is, although the source material should make it make sense. And I think, to speak to something Caleb said earlier, then you have the Avengers type thing. The Avengers, it does Marvel comics right. Like, it does what it's supposed to do. It does stick to the source material in a lot of ways and pays homage to the source material. Whereas in a lot of ways, the heart just hasn't been there in these movies. And to finally get like a solid, quote unquote, good blockbuster, it felt kind of glorious, in the time that it was released for me. And it was exactly what I wanted it to be. I think as a kid, you wanted it to have this level of feeling or a certain feeling to it. And I think that this movie, aside from everything you just said, which is absolutely true, by the way, and this is, ladies and gentlemen, this is why Ryan's here. Thank you. I still think it's entertaining. I think it's actually wildly entertaining in a lot of ways.
Well, and you know what? I would never tell someone that they shouldn't be entertained by something, because you can like something that's not objectively great. Sure. There are movies that I enjoy that aren't objectively good movies, but I just say, yeah, I know it's not a great movie. I love it anyway.
Yeah.
And so I feel like that's probably what you're saying. Yeah, I mean, it's not not the greatest movie, not a perfect movie, but hey,
Totally.
if you love it, there's nothing to criticize there when you say you like it anyway. It's just okay. That's just you. That's cool. Mikey.
That's why we reviewed Fast and Furious entirely.
Literally.
It's funny. I had a Twitter exchange with another writer. This was back when they were previewing whatever the next one was coming out, and we both were like, it's the craziest thing. We should hate these movies, but every time they're coming out, we're like, that looks dumb, and I will see you on opening night.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I sat here for like 6 months trying to defend those movies from Mikey because he just could not stand having fun with those stupid, dumb movies.
I love those movies.
Those were
so
good
much.
episodes, Caleb. Come on.
You
Those were
loved it.
fun.
You
It was
love
so
battling.
much fun. I
with
sat
me.
back and watched my we had horrible audio, and I sat back and enjoyed all of that while we were trying to figure this freaking Zoom thing out. Good times. Good times. But no, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to
Go
take
ahead.
over.
No, go ahead.
I was just
I
gonna
interrupted
say,
you.
yeah, you hit the nail on the head though. Everything that you just said, it can be like, yeah, everything you said is absolutely 100% right. And I still love 90% of what this movie does because it's what I wanted as a kid, and it delivered finally. I've grown up with the idea and romanticized an idea of what I saw in my head. And it was that thing of whenever I go back and watch the old movies, it's like, these are cool. But I enjoy them, and the nostalgia is there. But whenever I watch this movie, I love this movie. Like, I really, really enjoy watching it, very much in a Fast and the Furious type of way, for sure.
Well, and there's a lot to be said for seeing a movie at certain points in your life.
Totally.
You know, where it's like,
yeah,
it's just the right time in your life, and it kind of it scratches like the right part of your brain, and so you could even later on see things that you didn't see before that you're like, oh, that doesn't really work, but you still love it because you loved it the first time you saw it. So
Totally.
sometimes it's just timing. Caleb.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of where I'm at because I think, like Ryan, all your points, yeah, I think there's truth to them, but I think you could do that into 95% of superhero movies, probably even more of just action movies, and come up with the same conclusions because that's just how movies work. Like, unfortunately, there's only a few movies out there that are really, really well written and have, really airtight plots and have all of these other various things. Because at the end of the day, sometimes that just doesn't sell as well as a good, fun movie. And that's the thing. It's like this movie just works for me just because it's fun, it's enjoyable, it looks really good, it's well paced. I don't know. It's just I don't sit there to overly critique it in that way. And I get that's what we're supposed to be kind of doing here, but it's just I don't know. It just works for me in that, I guess, in a Fast and Furious type of way where it looks cool and it feels cool, and most of it works for me, so I enjoy it. But I don't know.
Caleb,
Yeah.
you just officially earned your wannabe card because that's exactly what you're talking about. Like,
It took me 2 years. Great.
Yeah, finally, you've earned the wannabe card. I haven't even earned mine yet, so there's that. No, dude, like, and I'm not trying to like take over from mine or anything, but everything you just said, I totally agree with. In that, whenever you really enjoy a movie, I think there's definitely movies out there, like we sit down and we talk about the Fast and the Furious, and we all overly critique it, and we all have things to say about it, but we end up loving it. But whenever it's kind of split down the middle, or not, split a few different ways, like Mikey didn't understand where some of my you both didn't really understand where some of my criticisms were coming from. Mikey and myself were kind of understanding things where Ryan was coming from. You were, kind of bouncing around. We were all kind of bouncing around all over the place. Whenever it's split like that, that's what makes these conversations fun, is that whenever you really enjoy something and you don't understand why someone else is criticizing it, it's like it doesn't compute, and it's fun to talk about, and it's some really hilarious conversations end up happening because it's like you want to just say you're an idiot, but that's not what we do here, right? I mean, it's just literally
it is sometimes.
Yeah, I mean sometimes, but I mean you say it, you say you're an idiot without saying you're an idiot, right? And I mean it's just so much fun to like hear and watch people's reactions. Like every time, literally everything Ryan was saying, like me and Mike, you're like, yeah, this was Caleb. Caleb was just like
On his phone.
deep in thought about everything.
I
Ryan
can't
was saying.
believe
And he was
this.
he's like, God dang it. Like he's right. That's the frustrating thing, is he's right. But to what Ryan said, like, there's nothing wrong with enjoying the movie, and no one can tell you you're an idiot for enjoying the movie, period. Like,
Right. And I'm not looking for flawless movies. I'm just kind because even with good movies, of course you're always going to find something to critique.
Mhm.
And if a movie's good, I sometimes even like to do that anyway, just because it's like sharpening the storytelling blade for me. I can say, okay, what might I have tightened up? What could they have done better, even if it's an objectively good movie? Um, it's just, you can do that. The tone changes for me if I'm critiquing a good a movie that I think was well done, but of course has some flaws because they all do. Um, versus something that I feel like is lazily written. That's where I kind of get off the train and I have a hard time enjoying something if I feel like I'm not being respected as an audience member by whoever wrote and directed it. Um, but again, that's just a personal thing. Mikey,
You know what that's called?
what's it called?
Being a wannabe critic.
Bingo, bazingo. I have something to say too.
Gabe.
And and it is one of those things too where it's literally your job to tell stories for a living, right? And you've earned that, and it's such an interesting place you get to find yourself in, where you get to do that for a living. So whenever you do get to sit in that seat of, it's weird because you get to sit into a seat of, I know what he's doing there, but you also are inherently sitting in the seat as an audience member being told somebody else's story. So it's really hard for the average viewer to they don't get to sit in the same seat as you in that way, so you kind of get to see the best of both worlds. And that's what makes this podcast even more fun, is whenever we can tell, like, you hold back so good sometimes, but I can like see it on your faces. Like, he just wants to shake us sometimes. Like, I can tell. And it's so freaking funny.
Not for this movie.
Not for this
one.
movie. Well,
I understand.
Well, that's why, like, I purposely had you host this episode because like it just made too much sense. I was like, how is he gonna be diplomatic about this? And it was just, it's been really fun so far, because it's hard to imagine what it's like to tell stories for a living.
Well,
So,
I'll get to you in a second, Mikey, and then Caleb. It's a double-edged sword because it is fun kind of knowing how the sausage is made, and being able to look behind the scenes and say, oh, I see what they did there. I think that's cool. The other edge of it is that sometimes you say things you wish you hadn't seen, and you're like, oh man. but when you're pleasantly surprised, it makes it that much even better because you're like, oh man, that was really good. Mikey.
That's exactly what I was going to ask. I was going to ask if you ever wish you could turn it off.
Sometimes. Well, I'll give you a perfect example. I was reading, and this was a book. I was reading a friend's book who's an excellent writer.
Mm-hmm.
This wasn't written like a badly written book by any means, but it was a mystery. It was a like sort of murder mystery type thing. And I got to page 3.
Oh wow!
And there was one sentence that just did one little thing, and I said, "That's the killer."
Yeah.
I knew because I know how he was. I knew what he was doing to foreshadow it without foreshadowing it.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, "Oh man, I figured it out on page 3."
I got 200 more pages.
I still read it, and it was still a great book. But at that point, I was like, it would have been nice to be surprised.
Yeah. Interesting.
Caleb, you had a comment.
No, it's all good. I forgot it.
I think he's just given up. Whatever.
I think
fine. It's where I'm at mentally at this point, so it's all good.
Caleb's tired, I think.
Right, it's later for you, right?
Yeah, it is a bit later for Caleb.
Yeah. Well, does anyone have any final thoughts about Days of Future Past? I feel like we covered a lot, but any parting words?
This movie's gorgeous, and it's I think there are certain visuals in the later X-Men movies that follow this, which are in a lot of ways some of the only saving graces, I think, in these next few X-Men movies we're going to be talking about. This is by far the best looking one. The weird Sentinels look amazing. They behave. I mean, I'm not a fan of. I'm kind of with you, Ryan. Like, I wish we would have gotten a post-apocalyptic like giant thing of giants basically that they were fighting. I understand why we didn't get that, but just watching them kind of just decimate the X-Men was weirdly satisfying. It's a machine that was designed to do something really, really well, and it ended up being worse than it ended up being too good at its job. It's like kind of like the AI thing of the AI has taken over and now you can't stop it. But yeah, that was been. I think this is the special effects are up there with an MCU movie for me personally.
Cool. Anyone else? Incidentally, that would have been, I think, a more interesting movie if it was all in the future, and the government finally comes to the last remaining mutants and was like, once these machines kill you, they're going to kill us. So if we work together, can we all destroy these machines? That might have been an interesting what if. Yeah, and that way you kind of steer into it. And anyway, that's a movie that'll never happen. But
I do love how I do love how terrible of an idea the Sentinels are. Just terrible idea it's an idea that would only work in a comic book world because it's just such a terrible idea. And they had to take it to the like North Vietnamese to try to get them to sign off on it because like even in this comic book world, the US is like, nah, that's too crazy. It's such a great thing that they like try to sell it in this movie. I don't know. It's just funny.
Suspension of disbelief, friend.
Yeah.
Okay. Boy, we really covered a lot, didn't we? Let's talk about how everyone can find us. Gabe.
Wait, we got to score this bad boy.
Oh, we have to score. Sorry. Wow. I'm trying to skip over to the end.
You get an F for hosting.
F for fantastic.
Yeah. Yeah, we still got to score it. Everyone's got to put their stamp in.
Okay.
Oh, Rex isn't here. God rest his soul. He couldn't make it tonight, by the way.
We'll just say
Rex is dead.
Yeah, Rex couldn't make it. He got time warped by Kitty Pryde's powers.
His mind is back in the 70s, and when he comes back, we won't know him anymore.
Yeah, exactly.
Mikey, what's your score?
Oh man.
Also, a new official rule. I don't know if you guys have been listening to the shows recently.
No tens?
No more decimals allowed.
Solid
Decimals.
numbers.
There's no more decimal, like 0.5, none of that.
Oh,
So
okay.
it's either it's got to be a solid number.
Wow, that makes it harder.
Right? It makes you think about it more.
You know,
the very fact that I hate that rule probably says that it's a good rule because it does make you
make
a bigger decision.
I don't want to give it a lower score than what I want to give it. So I'm going to give it, Ryan might not agree with this, I'm going to give it an 8. But just because for the personal nostalgia,
Your score is your score, man.
Because it does fulfill a lot of childhood things, you know? Like I grew up with these movies, like, and it brings back everybody and it ties it all up. And some of it may not make sense, but you know what? I think it's a good movie and I really enjoy it. I really, really enjoy it. And I love where it takes you. And I think an 8 is a decent score for how good of a movie this is, in my opinion.
Caleb.
Well, if Ryan hates your score, Mikey, he's probably really going to hate mine because I'm going to give it a 9. Yeah, this is one of the more entertaining superhero movies for me. Like, that's the thing is like, I watched this movie like a month ago and I was like totally ready to like just go back and rewatch it like a month later. I really enjoy this movie. It's just entertaining. It's fun. Is it perfect? No. Is it the most smart movie, like even superhero movie out there? No. But it's really entertaining and it's, I don't know. It's, I guess, junk food movie in that sense, but I don't know. I have a sweet spot for some of those types of movies in my life. So, yeah.
Gabe.
Yeah. So it comes down to that thing of I find myself leaning more towards a certain number because you have to ask yourself, since there's no decimals, you got to ask yourself the question, is it closer to this number? Is it closer to this number? Yeah. And in my heart of hearts, like I want to give it a higher score, but the more I think about it and like, it feels like a solid 8 to me. I think it, I mean, yeah, like literally that's
a perfectly fair way to curve the score.
Yeah.
Literally. I mean, it's a big thing for me. And like, that's the thing. It never worked for me the first time I saw it. And I love Jennifer Lawrence. I do. Like, she's a great actress. It just doesn't work for me here. And you know, if that's misogynistic, shoot me, you know what I mean? But yeah, it's 8 out of 10, still high praise, I think, for you know, for the movie, the type of movie that it is.
Personally, I mean, I don't hate any of your scores because that's how you feel. So this is not a terrible movie.
Oh no.
Nor is it a good movie.
Uh-oh.
To me. I didn't like hate or loathe it, but there wasn't a lot that I enjoyed. So I would put it right down the middle and give it a 5.
Whoa. Ooh. He said loathe. I knew something bad was about to happen.
That hurts my soul. That hurts my heart.
Oof.
5 out of 10. Okay.
What did you give First Class?
A
8.
10 baby, 10 all the
way. That's the only movie I watched. Didn't I tell you? No.
Yeah.
No, I think I gave First Class an 8.
Wow, that is a drastic difference, man.
Yeah. So okay, what's the average? So we had 2 8s and a 9. That's 25, 30. What's 30 divided by 4? Who has a calculator?
I'm doing it right
like
now.
7 point something.
Yeah.
30 divided by
7.5.
7.5, which
Man, that was
means
close.
5 and
It's
up. Right?
It's an 8.
It's
rounding
an 8,
up.
baby. Rounding up. Solid 8 across the board from the wannabes, baby.
I mean, I wouldn't say across the board, but
yeah, we all loved it. Listeners, don't listen to the imposter host.
This is your host.
Yeah,
this is your host. All glory to Hypnotoad.
Yeah, oh my God. Talking about pancakes and pointing out everything wrong with the movie. Who's this guy friggin' think he is? You know what I mean? No, I'm just kidding.
All right. Since I'm the guest host, I probably need a reminder. Is there anything else we need to get to before we hear how to find all of us?
Make sure you peep the links down below. Always, we got a bunch of stuff going on.
Why don't you do that? Because I don't have them.
Yeah. So peep the links. Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
Peep the links down below. We got Pop Cult USA.
I'm kidding. I'm kidding. I just want to see what you would say.
I was like, showbiz. I'm like, acting. What do I do? You got to keep it going.
I just wanted to put you on the spot.
Yeah, I feel like Michael Scott. I feel like Michael Scott at improv class. He's got.
Yes.
He's got to
check out our links.
Oh God.
Okay. Yeah, we have links. You should check them out for stuff that's cool.
That's the best.
That's all I have to say about that.
Nailed it.
Nice.
Mikey, where can people find you?
Nowhere really. I mean, I think I'm on Facebook. I might be on Instagram. I don't know. Look for me.
So you lose your passwords or something, or?
Nah, I don't ever look at them.
Caleb, where can people find you?
At Chief in NY 18 on Twitter. So yeah.
Gabe.
You can find me on Twitter at _wannabecritic, and you can find all of our respective stuff at Wannabe Critic Productions on pretty much anything now. Wannabe Critic Productions, you'll find us.
And you can find. Go ahead, Mikey.
No, it was stupid. Go ahead. Sorry.
You ruined my moment.
Proceed.
Oh my God.
If you want to find me, it's Instagram at Ryan Dalton, Twitter at iRyanDalton, and you can find my books in bookstores, your favorite bookstore. They don't have it on the shelves. You can ask for it. My next book doesn't come out for a while, but as we draw closer to that, I will continue to update you. And I think that's it for us. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in, and hope you enjoyed it. If you've got opinions yourself about what we said, either yay or nay, reach out to us. Let us know what you think. You never know. We might actually bring it up in another show and make fun of you for your opinion.
You'll definitely bring it up. That's, just give us something. Give me something. I need some feedback.
In the meantime, thank you for preparing yourself for a plethora of hot takes and unpopular opinions. Mikey, say goodbye.
So long.
Caleb, say goodbye.
Adios.
Gabe, say goodbye.
Bye.
And you stole mine. What a weird thing for me to be protective of. And this is Ryan Dalton saying a normal goodbye since Gabe took my silly one. Everybody, all right, geek on out there. Have a good one.
Whatever possessed you to check out the podcast or the YouTube channel today, I just want to say thank you so much for doing so. If this is your first time here, I would appreciate it, if you would consider subscribing. As you can tell, it's not just me here anymore. I mean, I do stuff by myself, but the podcast is going to reside here from now on, in video form. So if you want to see more content, if you want to be notified, every time we post something, whether it be a clip, a podcast, a review, an interview, whatever it may be, if it's gaming stuff, make sure you click that bell and hit the subscribe button, and we will see you next time. Thanks for sticking around, and thank you for preparing yourselves for a plethora of hot takes and potentially unpopular opinions. I'm Gabriel Fast. I will always be the wannabe critic.